Okay, I need to be honest with you right out of the gate. I've spent real money, adult money that could have been groceries or rent or something responsible, on fictional people that don't exist. I've paid to go on dates with imaginary men and live in deep space, I've paid to raise and train anime horse girls, and I've looked at my bank statement afterward and gone out loud to an empty room. Why am I like this? And here's the thing. I'm not confused about the fact that this is absurd. I'm fully aware that there's no physical man on the other side of that screen. I know that horse girls are not real horses, or real girls, or real anything. I am not delusional. I'm not lost in the source, and I'm not pretending that this is a good financial decision. And yet, the desire is real. The urge is real. The feeling that pulls you back to the banner or the shop or the limited time pack that says best value in bright, lying letters. That feeling is strong. Sometimes stronger than logic, sometimes stronger than shame, sometimes stronger than the very reasonable voice in your head that says, hey, maybe don't. And that's what this video is actually about. Not, haha, gambling bad. Not, people that play gacha are stupid. And not, just have some self-control. It's about why knowing it's irrational does not stop it from working. Because if it was just stupidity, this wouldn't be happening to so many people. If it was just poor impulse control, it wouldn't feel so specifically compelling. And if it was just gambling, it wouldn't be wrapped in a story, affection, routine, and emotional comfort. Gacha spending doesn't feel like throwing money into a slot machine. It feels like finishing something. It feels like not missing out. It feels like maintaining a relationship, even if that relationship is fictional and one-sided, and frankly kind of embarrassing to try and explain to your friends. And if you've ever thought, I wouldn't do this for a real person, so why am I doing it for a digital one? Congratulations, you are already halfway to understanding the problem. Because gacha games are not targeting your rational brain. They're not arguing with you, they're not convincing you, they are looping you. This did not come from nowhere. Before we get into the brain science, I want to zoom out for a second, because one of the easiest ways to dismiss gacha is to treat it like some weird modern mistake. Like it's just something that happened because smartphones ruined us, or because people suddenly lost self-control. That's not true. Gacha didn't appear out of nowhere. It is the latest, most optimized version of something humans have been doing for a very long time, paying for randomized possibility. Like decades, maybe even centuries, depending on how poetic you want to get about carnival games. Long before mobile games, there was gachapon. If you've ever been to Japan, or even a mall with a Bandai Namco store, you've seen them. Little plastic capsules, money in, turn the crank, get a random prize. Sometimes it's the one you want, and sometimes it's not. Sometimes you're annoyed, and sometimes you immediately do it again. Bandai didn't invent gachapon because people are stupid. They invented it because people love uncertainty when it's low risk and emotionally framed as fun. By the 70s and 80s, gachapon machines were everywhere in Japan. By the 90s, they were massively profitable. Entire franchises were built around them. People collected full sets. People traded duplicates. People sunk money into them, not because they were forced to, but because completing a set felt good. The same logic that carried over into card games. Pokemon cards, Yu-Gi-Oh!, Magic, baseball cards. Blind packs, randomized pulls, chase rares, limited prints. No one calls opening a booster pack irrational in the same way, even though it's functionally identical. You're paying money for uncertainty, driven by the hope of getting something special. Gacha games didn't invent that feeling. They digitalized it, scaled it, and attached it to characters. In the early 2010s, mobile gaming companies realized something important. Random reward systems make money, and a lot of money. Games like Dragon Collection proved that people would spend consistently on pulls if you wrap them in progression, and Fantasy, Grand Blue Fantasy showed that gacha could sustain years of player engagement. Entire live service models were built around rotating banners, seasonal characters, and limited time units. And then Genshin Impact happened. Genshin didn't just succeed, it exploded. It pulled gacha into the global mainstream. It showed that people would accept gacha mechanics inside a polished, story-driven, high-production game. It made billions. And not because it tricked people, but because it married uncertainty with world building, attachment, and routine. And after that, the floodgates opened. Nikkei, Azure Lane, Zenless Zone Zero, Love in Deep Space, Uma Musume, different aesthetics, different audiences, same core loop. And here's the important part. Gacha mechanics aren't just confined to gacha games. Skins in shooters, loot boxes, battle passes, mystery cosmetics, randomized drops. Even outside games, the logic persists. Merch drops, blind boxes, limited editions, hype culture. The world has quietly agreed that paying for possibility is fun. So when you feel that pull, you're not responding to some brand new manipulation. You're responding to a system that's been refined for decades, tuned across industries, and proven profitable because it aligns very closely with how human motivation actually works. Which brings us back to your brain, because none of this works if the brain doesn't cooperate. So now we know it's not just a personal failing, not just a modern problem, we can finally slow down and ask the real question. What exactly is happening in your head when you press that button? Because the real engine of gacha spending isn't greed, or stupidity, or even the reward itself, it's anticipation. And once you understand how anticipation works in the brain, the rest of the system starts to make a very uncomfortable amount of sense. Let's talk about the brain on gacha. Most people explain gacha by saying one word and then moving on. Dopamine. Dopamine this, dopamine that, dopamine go brrr. And while dopamine is involved, that explanation is doing way less work than what people think. Because the real trick of gacha is not the reward, it's the anticipation. Your brain doesn't experience pleasure as a single spike when something good happens. Pleasure is a process, and the part of your brain that lights up the most isn't the moment you get the thing, it's the moment right before you might. When you press the pull button, several systems activate at once. Your amygdala, which handles your emotional salience, basically, does this matter, wakes up. Not because you're afraid, but because uncertainty feels important. Your body treats uncertainty like a potential threat and a potential reward, and that's why your heart rate changes. That's why your shoulders tense. That's why you lean forward a little, even though you've done this hundreds of times. At the same time, your ventral tegmental area, VTA, starts preparing dopamine, not releasing it yet, preparing it. Dopamine is not a happy chemical, it's a motivational chemical. It says, pay attention, something could happen. This is crucial. Dopamine spikes most strongly before outcomes, not after them. That means the animation, the slow reveal, the fake suspense, the glitter, the rising music is neurologically more important than the result itself. This is why gacha games put so much effort into their pull animations. Not because they're pretty, but because they stretch anticipation. Your nucleus accumbens, the part of your brain that translates anticipation into desire, is watching that animation like a hawk. Every fraction of a second where the outcome is delayed gives your brain more time to generate motivation. This is also why near misses are so powerful. When you get the thing you want, when the animation looks promising but turns into a consolation prize, your brain doesn't register it as a failure. It registers it as progress. It goes, okay, not this time, but we're close. You're not. The probability did not change. The system doesn't care how many times you've tried, but your brain is involved in an environment where repeated attempts did increase success. Hunting, gathering, social bonding, courtship, persistence used to matter. And gacha hijacks that instinct. So when you miss, your dopamine doesn't drop to zero, it stays elevated. You feel tension, not closure, and tension wants resolution. This is where the infamous just one more pull comes from. Not stupidity, not lack of discipline, an unresolved motivational loop. And then we add money. Once money enters the picture, your prefrontal cortex, the part of your brain responsible for long-term planning and restraint, starts to lose ground. Why? Because now you're not just anticipating a reward, you're justifying prior effort. This is the sunk cost fallacy, but emotionally, not academically. You don't think, I've spent $80 already. You think, it'd be awful if that $80 was for nothing. Which is a lie your brain tells you to avoid emotional loss. Loss hurts more than gain feels good. That's loss aversion. And gacha systems are built entirely around exploiting it. Every pull you don't convert into success feels like something's slipping away. The longer you stay in the loop, the harder it becomes to walk out with closure. This is especially true in games like Love and Deep Space, where the reward isn't just a unit, but an experience. You're not pulling for stats, you're pulling for scenes, dialogue, moments, emotional payoff, the sense that you're progressing a relationship. Your brain doesn't class that as gambling. It categorizes it as unfinished business. And once something feels unfinished, your brain will spend an unreasonable amount of resources trying to complete it. This is also why the embarrassment hits after, not during. During the pull, you're locked into anticipation. Your brain is future-focused. Afterward, when the loop resolved, either through success or exhaustion, your rational mind wakes back up and goes, oh no. The whiplash is not a sign you're stupid, is just a sign that the system has worked. Because gacha games are not designed to overpower you in one moment, they're designed to slowly teach your brain that the loop is comforting. The anticipation becomes familiar, the ritual becomes soothing, the act of pulling, even when it fails, becomes something you return to when you're bored, lonely, stressed, or emotionally flat. And once that association forms, you're not spending money for the reward anymore. You're spending money to re-enter the feeling. The behavioral traps. So at this point, you might be thinking, okay, sure, my brain likes anticipation, dopamine, uncertainty, whatever, but I'm still choosing to spend money. I could just stop. And yes, technically you could, but gacha games don't rely on impulse alone. They rely on a stack of cognitive biases that quietly push you forward even when you think you're being careful. One of the biggest ones is something you might have heard of before, but almost never felt explained properly: the sunk cost fallacy. In theory, it's simple. Past costs shouldn't affect future decisions, money already spent is gone, so it shouldn't matter. But in practice, that's not how it feels at all. Because when you've already spent money on a banner, when you've already invested time, emotional energy, and hope, stopping doesn't feel neutral, it feels like losing twice. It feels like admitting that effort was pointless. So instead of asking, is this next pull worth the money, your brain reframes the question as, can I afford to let all of that effort go to waste? The shift is subtle, but it's devastating. Now, the next pull isn't about gain, it's about damage control. And gacha games love that framing. This is why pity systems exist. On the surface, a pity system looks consumer-friendly. Don't worry, the game says, if you pull enough times, you're guaranteed something good. And what that actually does is turn every pull into a step on a staircase. You're no longer gambling, you're progressing. You start thinking in terms of distance instead of probability. I'm 30 pulls in. I'm halfway to pity. I've already done most of the work. Even if each pull costs real money, your brain treats it like progress bars in a video game. And humans are extremely bad at abandoning progress bars. This is also where probability neglect kicks in. Your brain is terrible at understanding small percentages. A 0.6% chance doesn't feel like almost impossible. It feels like rare, but possible. Especially when you've seen a friend got it in one pull. Especially when the game shows you the shiny animation over and over. Your brain doesn't think in maths, it thinks in stories. And the story itself is, someone has to win. Why not me? And this is where the I'm due feeling comes from. Logically, you know the odds don't change. Emotionally, repetition feels like momentum. Effort feels like entitlement. And after enough failed pulls, your brain starts whispering, it would be ridiculous if you didn't get this soon. And this isn't because you're arrogant. It's because humans have evolved in systems where repeated effort often did increase success. You dig long enough, you find water, you hunt long enough, you get food, you pursue long enough, someone reciprocates, right? Gacha takes that ancient instinct and plugs it into a system where persistence means nothing. And your brain doesn't know that. It just knows you've been trying. Another trap that doesn't get talked about is the endowment effect. Once you own something, even a digital character, your brain assigns more value to it simply because it's yours. This is why people defend their favorite units so hard. This is why limited skins feel precious, and this is why losing an account feels devastating, even if objectively it's just data. Ownership creates attachment, and attachment makes spending feel justified. In games like Uma Musume, it gets even more intense. You don't just pull a horse girl and move on. You train her, you invest time, you watch her fail and succeed, and you build a little narrative around her. And by the time you're considering spending money to optimize her build, it doesn't feel like just paying for pixels. It feels like supporting something you've already bonded with. And that's the key word. Bonded. Because once emotional bonding enters the equation, the rational cost-benefit analysis leaves the room. And this is why people get so defensive when gacha spending is criticized. It's not just about money, it's about meaning. Criticizing the spending feels like criticizing the attachment, and humans protect their attachments fiercely, even when they know they're a little embarrassing, especially when they know. There's something important happening with time pressure. Limited banners are not just about scarcity, they're about interrupting reflection. If you had infinite time to think about a purchase, many of these decisions wouldn't happen. You'd sleep on it, you'd talk yourself out of it. But when the game says, character gone in 5 days, your brain switches modes. Urgency collapses nuance. You stop asking, is it worth it long time? And start asking, will I regret missing this? and regret is a powerful motivator. Humans are far more motivated to avoid future regret than to seek future pleasure. Gacha games exploit this by framing absence as loss. You're not buying something, you're preventing a bad feeling later. This is especially potent in relationship-based gacha games. Missing a banner doesn't feel like missing loot, it feels like missing a moment, a scene, a development, a piece of a story that you care about and that you're involved in. Your brain treats that like social loss, and social loss hurts. Which brings us to the uncomfortable part. A lot of gacha spending isn't about excitement at all. It's about comfort. The pull ritual becomes something familiar, something predictable in its unpredictability. Something you do at the end of a long day when you're tired, lonely, overstimulated, or emotionally flat. You know exactly how it will feel. You know the rhythm, the sounds, the disappointment, the relief. Even the disappointment can be comforting if it's familiar. And at that point, money stops being the main barrier. Real cost is breaking that routine. Breaking routines is hard, especially when they're emotionally regulating. So when people say, why don't you just stop? What they're really asking is, why don't you just remove a coping mechanism, a source of structure, and a reliable emotional stimulus from your life all at once, which is not as simple as it sounds. Why it's not just pixels. At some point, every gacha conversation hits the same wall. Someone says, why would you spend real money on fake people? And the implied follow-up is, why would you care about something that isn't real? And on the surface, that sounds reasonable. But if you sit with it for more than 5 seconds, it completely falls apart. Because humans care about fake things all the time. We cry at movies, we grieve fictional characters, we get attached to stories, mascots, sports teams, brands, ideas. We feel real emotion in response to things that don't physically exist. What matters isn't whether something is real, it's whether your brain treats it as emotionally real. And gacha games are extremely good at making things emotionally real. Take relationship-based gacha games like Love and Deep Space. You're not just pulling for a model or a voice line, you're pulling for continuity, for presence, for the feeling that something is waiting for you when you log in. The interactions are paced, the affection is predictable but responsive, the characters are written to feel attentive without being demanding. And here's the uncomfortable truth. For a lot of people, that feels safer than real intimacy. Real relationships are messy, they require negotiation, vulnerability, rejection, misalignment. They can disappear without warning, and they can hurt with ways that are hard to recover from. A fictional character will never ghost you. They will never wake up one day and want something incompatible. They exist exactly where you left them. That doesn't mean people who engage with this are broken. It means they're human. Our brains evolved to bond through interaction, consistency, and emotional feedback. Gacha games simulate just enough of that loop to trigger attachment without risk. So when someone says, it's just pixels, what they're missing is that your emotional response is not imaginary. The attachment is real, even if the object isn't. And once attachment exists, spending money doesn't feel like indulgence, it feels like maintenance. This is also why people feel defensive about it. Because if you frame gacha spending as stupid, what you're actually calling stupid is the emotional need it's fulfilling. And people don't respond well to that. Why don't we just quit? At this point, it's tempting to wrap things up with advice. Set limits, be mindful, budget, take breaks. And sure, those things can help, but they don't address the deeper reason that quitting feels so hard. Because stopping gacha isn't just stopping spending, it's breaking a loop that's been regulating your emotions. For a lot of people, gacha fills very specific gaps. It's something to look forward to at the end of the day. It's something predictable when everything else feels chaotic. It's a low-stakes way to feel excitement, disappointment, hope, release. And when you remove that suddenly, what's left isn't relief, it's silence. And silence is uncomfortable. This is why people uninstall and then reinstall, why they swear they're done and then they come back for just one more pull. Why moderation feels harder than abstinence, but abstinence feels impossible. They're not just walking away from a game. You're walking away from a routine that gave structure to your emotional life, and if nothing replaces that structure, your brain will keep reaching for it. This is also why shame doesn't work. Feeling bad about spending doesn't stop the loop, it just adds another emotion that the loop temporarily soothes. So if there is a way out, or at least a way to make it healthier, it doesn't start with self-loathing. It starts with actually understanding what the game is giving you. Is it excitement, connection, routine, distraction, comfort? Because once you know that, you can start asking a better question than, why am I so bad with money? You could ask, what am I trying to feel right now? And sometimes the answer is, I just want something that won't hurt me. So here's the honest ending to this video. I still play gacha games. I still feel the pull. I still get excited about banners, and I still have moments where I want to buy something that I shouldn't. Understanding that system doesn't magically turn it off, but it does change how much power it has. Because once you see the loop, it stops feeling like a personal failure. It becomes something that you can negotiate with. You can set boundaries without pretending you're immune. You can enjoy the fantasy without letting it run your life. And you can laugh at the absurdity while still acknowledging the comfort. And maybe most importantly, you can stop treating yourself like you're broken for wanting things that make you feel something. Spending money on fictional men, training horse girls, opening waifu. Yeah, it's a little ridiculous, but it's also deeply human. So if you ever looked at your bank account and thought, why did I do that? I hope this helped you answer the question with something kinder than, because I'm stupid. You did it because your brain is doing exactly what it's evolved to do. The trick isn't to hate yourself for it. It's to understand it well enough that you get to decide when the loop runs, instead of the other way around.